Okay. Give me a second, it's going. We're live. All right, greetings everyone. Welcome to Esoteric Lighthouse. How y'all doing this evening? Go start off with the disclaimer. Welcome to Esoteric Lighthouse. We're an independent forum of Prince Hall Freemasons who focus on the esoteric and occult philosophical teachings found in Freemasonry. This being a public forum and not a representation of any Grand Lodge or affiliated body. The views and comments and opinions are held of the individual panelists and does not represent any affiliated orders or Grand Lodges we hold membership with. All right, what's going on? How y'all doing this evening?
And it's gonna be a great day, man. Mike, I'm ready. I'm ready for this. Let us know this topic, man. This is gonna be a good one.
Well, this topic, right? All right, this is one of these topics that's always been near and dear to my heart. And it's Genesis 1, 2, 3. I think everybody, pretty much everybody in the world who studies any type of spiritual teaching should understand where I'm coming from with this. Because it says it's the beginning of everything, according to the Hebrew alphabet. Well, not the Hebrew alphabet, just I'm giving that away. But according to the Hebrew pantheon or the Hebrew literature of Judaism and the beginning. So with that, I'm taking it on a different journey. I'll give you some of the Kabbalistic explanations of it. Then I'll give you a little bit of a Masonic twist on it. Then I'll break it down to you down into a little further. This topic is it's not something that many people are comfortable with because it goes against what most people would consider their belief system. I'm not trying to step on anyone's belief system either. So just so you guys understand that this is just an interpretation. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start by sharing my screen. I've already did the introduction. I'm trying to make you full. Sorry about that. Is it still sharing? Can you still see it?
Yep, we can still see you.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. All right, there we go. And you. All right. So, yeah, exploring the first day of Genesis. I'm Brother Michael Williams. All right, I already did the disclaimer. Here's the agenda. I'll be talking about Berashith. The first day, cycles of narratives, how God creates, formless and void, the spirit of God, and let there be light. So, starting out with Berashith. Berashith, Genesis in English, but in Hebrew it is called Berashith. It is the book of alchemy, the science of transmutation. Yes, Genesis is a book of science and a book of transmutation. Some people may not agree or they may have a different opinion. However, through research and study of mine and a couple other people with me and various historians around the world, it actually seems to be a book of alchemy and science. In Hebrew, alchemy is written as alchemia. Analyzing this word Kabbalistically, we see that it is composed of El, Chemi, and the letter He. El means God. Chemi means as in the days. So in the first word is in the days of God. So alchemy, in the days of God, we clearly point to the book of Genesis, which is Berashith, where we find the alchemical story of the 7 days of creation. Then there is the letter He at the end of the word alchemia. This hay means the hay, which means means by itself, behold, as also in a breath. So remember that, a breath and hay. We'll come back to that in a little bit later. Thus, alchemia can mean the days of God, behold, or in the hold the days of God in a breath. Berashith, in the beginning of what? Universal consciousness is defined as Adam Kadmon. The book of formation and the book of concealed mystery, the tree of life, as a physical component of God's body of man as a species. The 7 planets in the universe, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. 7 days in the year, 7 days of the week, 7 gates in the soul, male and female, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and the mouth. So the beginning of what? The beginning of our solar system. So theory believes that about 6,000 years ago, somehow some cataclysmic event of some sort may or may have not happened. We don't know what it can be. The invention of our species, we really don't know. I went around 6,000 years to speculate. However, what I can say is that this science was created based on an event that happened 6,000 years ago. And it was based on the alignment of our planet and our solar system. And that created our 7 days of the week, and also the alignment with the zodiac signs and our planets. And also the 7 gates, we align those again, our 2 eyes, our 2 ears, our 2 nostrils, and our mouths between male and female. In the beginning, Elohim created the substance of heavens and this substance of the earth. The sense is 6. 6 members were created, which are 6 numerations of the micropropulsals, viz. Dignity as his right arm, severity, his left arm, beauty, his body, victory, his right leg, glory, his left leg, and the foundation, and his as the reproductive. For instance, Berashith, in the beginning, it may be read as Berashith. He created 6. The beginning of creation, or the generation of consciousness, thought, and action. So again, Berashith, what is the beginning of? We're talking about the beginning of our galaxy, our solar system, our understanding of consciousness, our understanding of ourselves, our understanding of our mind, and where we are as a human species on this planet, which may have generated about 6,000 years ago, and it's just a generation of understanding. A beginning, not the beginning, a beginning. Let me rephrase that, a beginning. All right, the first day of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the faces of water. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Genesis is about creating and separating, or making divisions, boundaries, and distinctions. God created by separating light from darkness and earth from sea. So basically, creative process was a dividing from self, or self from one thing, or taking one thing from one property and creating another property. That substance at the time, we don't know. I'm not here to speculate. All right. The first creation account begins in Genesis 1:1 and ends in 2:3. Genesis 2:4a, which reads, "These are the generations of the heavens and the earth." When they were created is the heading, and it introduces the cycle of narratives. These are the cycle of narratives. So basically, the cycle of narratives, it's a problem, a preparation, and a population. So what's the problem? The problem is we have darkness, we have a watery abyss, we have formless and a void. So what do we have to do? We have to prepare these divisions. What are these divisions? It's called opus divisionis. Is light or non-solar. You have a sky dome, and which is a watery abyss. Then you have a dry land, and you have plants. Then you have tohu, which is form. So remember, we have formless, then we have to create form. So we have to prepare. So what is Genesis? It's creating. We're preparing for something. So now we have to move on to the next part, which is the remaining of the days. So in the preparation, you have day 1, day 2, and day 3. Then we move on to the remaining days, which are the opus ornatus. The opus ornatus is when you get the skylights, which are the sun, the moon, and the stars. Then you get day 5, which are the sea and sky creatures to separate the waters. And day 6, you get the land animals and humanity, which is and fills the bohu. Tohu is formed and bohu is filled. So in preparation, tohu is formed and population, bohu is filled. So what we're saying in day 1, in the first couple of days of Genesis, you're forming things. And then the remaining or latter days of Genesis, the last 3 days of Genesis, you're filling things, forming and filling. So this is the cycle of narratives and the 7 days of Genesis. Again, when you look at the first slide where I was talking about our 7 days on the calendar and all of that stuff, we're talking about generation and how things were created. We're talking about a narrative of how we explain things. We don't know what happened 6,000 years ago, but these narratives were created to explain what happened after the fact. So how does God create? In the beginning, God created. So God created. Berashith is translated by the Tagnarim Yotan as Bet Chokmeta, with wisdom. Okhelenos translates as Be Kadmim, primordially. This is the aspect of Kether, which is called Kadmon. Primordial sense, the aspect of essence is as it proceeds as Hokmah. This is because wisdom is found from nothing, but in itself, and not an actual, and is nothing, which is not the case, which in regard as desire, according to Shahar Ichad, the gate of unity. The essential Hokmah is what is called primal Hokmah, or simple Hokmah, as it exists within God's simple unity. Kether and Hokmah are one. With wisdom, God created, or gods and goddesses. So basically, with wisdom, God created the heavens and earth, according to Kabbalah. So God created the heavens and earth through wisdom and understanding. So if you look at it, it's saying that Hokmah is the first sphere. Technically, Keter reflects through Hokmah. So Kether is not the first sphere. Hokmah is actually the first sphere. The light is received from Kether into Hokmah, but Kether actually does not move itself. Hokmah doesn't move itself even. That's another story, and I'll explain that later. Wisdom is a continuum. This is why it says Berashith about Hokmah, which is a compound of Berashith. It's a numerical value of the letter Beth, which is 2, because Hokmah is the second of the 10 Sephiroth. It is called Reshit, beginning, because it relates to the world of Bria, which is creation. Although the supernal and concealed Kether is the first of all Sephiroth, Kether is not included in the number of Sephiroth because it relates to the world as a loop of archetypes. Thus, the second, namely Hokmah, is considered Reshit, the beginning. Therefore, it is considered Bereshit, Beth, since it is the second Sephiroth in order in the emanations of the Sephiroth and at the beginning. Since the first in the Bria, since it's the first in Bria, the counting as Kether is not counted. So what I'm saying here is, like, you have 4 worlds in Kabbalah. The very top world where Kether sits is invisible, it's irreachable, it's not reachable, it's not seen. Hokmah is on that next level. It's in the next level where light is seen and emanates through wisdom and knowledge and understanding. So there, the rays of Kether pierces down from the first world into the second world, from the world of Azaluth, the world of archetypes, into the world of Bria, where the beginning actually takes place. Creation actually takes place in Bria, not in the first world. First world is in the thought, in the mind. The second world is where that thought starts to be put down and starting to come into action. So Beth actually means Hokmah, and Rashid, the higher and upper wisdom, which relates to the separate world, Hokmah, which cognizes that is always creating awakened and active consciousness. So what we're talking about active consciousness. Rashid, higher and upper wisdom, is active consciousness. So Keter is resting consciousness and Hokmah is active consciousness. So first you have a thought, then you put it into action. Wisdom is a continuum of thought, put it into action, motion. Tohu and Vohu, and the earth, physical body, was formless and void. Genesis 1:2. Tohu Vabohu, which means psyche. Yes, psyche of Ha-Adamah is formless and void. Therefore, the Zohar Ha-Adam, the man of splendors, is not yet formed. That means the mind has not formed. Your psyche has not formed. We haven't developed anything. Your mind is formless and void. When we investigate formless and void, the matter, earth, which we discover is chaotic, is that aspect is formless and void. We imagine the void, we imagine the space of nothingness. This is what the Kabbalah is called Ein Sof, which means endless space or limitless space. This means that matter itself exists as an abstract matter without form, diluted in space. So basically what it's saying is that matter is limitless space. So, and the same thing with consciousness. Matter and consciousness is limited within the void. I won't delve too much onto this because there'll be some follow-on lectures by Brother Michael Bailey, and he'll be diving into this a little bit deeper. So I'll end that here for now. Infinite space. If we want to find formless matter, we find it in all of space, all of infinite space. It is in what is written in Sanskrit called Akash. Akash is blue, dark substance, and it permeates the entire space. The Akash, which precisely is called Ein Sof. In space, we find together with Akash, with the Sanskrit, we call prana. Yes, prana. We talked about that earlier before in earlier episodes of ALH talking about prana. We've also talked about the void before, or energy. And Kabbalah, which is symbolized by the letter Shin, which means fire. You can see this, the second letter, which we find the word Eye, Asher, Eye, which means I become who becomes. That is translated in the book of Exodus. In the Bible, I am what I am, because it relates to the same thing. So Shin and fire and Akash, you're talking about fire of spirit, meaning I am that I am, which is also infinite space, which is everywhere, which is in the void. Breath, the breath of God. And the earth was out form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the spirit of God, the Ruach Elohim, moved upon the face of the waters, Mayim. These verses of the Sephirah Berashith describe the creative breath of the Elohim. This is inhaled breath. This precedes an exhalation, a divine utterance that brings the universe into manifestation. It is therefore associated with the Ein Sof. So what we're saying is that in the beginning, there was an exhalation. Then there was an inhalation, or there was an inhaled breath that precedes an exhalation, then a word. So there was an inhaling, a divine, then So what are we talking about? Sounds like a breath mantra meditation. I don't know, you tell me. It is also closely connected with the term holy breath and breath of the living God, according to the Sefer Yetzirah 1:9. These verses from the Sefer Berashith describe the creative breath of the Elohim. This is an inhaled breath that precedes the exhalation of divine utterance. This brings the universe into manifestation. So after the word of was spoken, a breath was taken. Basically, a particle becomes a line becomes a wave becomes a vibration, and a vibration becomes a frequency. What do I mean by that? So you have a point that starts in a point within a circle. That point starts a vibration. That vibration starts a line. That line starts a frequency, and then is an utterance. And that utterance manifests into what we call the word. I hope y'all caught on to what I said. The spirit or breath of God can be interpreted in these texts. Kabbalistic code for the Hebrew word shin, because like shin, the phrase war Elohim has the value of 300. In the Sefer Yetzirah, the letter shin is associated with fire, the element of the phrase breath of God. Again, fire associated with the breath of God can also be understood with the association of movement and action, or the divine element of fire, that fiery wave that flickers in and out like a breath. But when we're talking about the breath of God, we're talking about electricity inside a human body. We're talking about creating humidity. The best way to get a good example of what I'm talking about, the breath of God, fire inside of water, because Mayim represents water, and which is Mem, and Shin represents fire. Fire was inside the water, creates electricity inside the human body. You go outside in a cold day, you breathe outside, you see that fire within the water, you call it humidity, and you see it in the air vapors. That's what we're talking about. You can see that divine breath based on that. Holy fire. In the Sefer Yetzirah, Shin is associated with the fire element phrase, breath of God, and it can be associated with the movement action of the fine element of fire. Again, like I said, it's with the movement of fire. The Etz Chaim, or the tree of life, is a mandala and is based on an interaction of the primary elements of fire, water, and air. So what are we talking about? The tree of life is based on 3 elements, fire, water, and air. And guess what they're putting into action? Earth. You represent the earth. Again, your physicality, your mind, everything represents the earth. So again, the tree of life represents a mandala that you're practicing on yourself using fire, air, and water, electricity, and breathing. Active consciousness. This is what we're talking about. The divine element of fire, Shin, and water, Mayim, exist in Ein Sof in a dormant, unmixed state. But when Elohim chooses to actively combine fire with water, divine air, Aleph, is pronounced. Aleph, ah. So we're talking about the beginning of the Hebrew alphabet. Then the first letter Aleph comes out. Although Berashith starts with Beit, which is the second Hebrew alphabet. There's a reason behind that, and there's a story behind it. Don't have too much time to tell it tonight, but I can tell it at a later date. So continuing on, cosmic force, Shin, as occultly described in the Sefer Berashith 1.12, it can be symbolically understood as referring to the Kundalini force located within the creator's base chakra. So again, Shin, we're talking about fire. So when you're talking about fire and force, you're talking about Kundalini, you're talking about the chakras, you're talking about the root chakra down at the base level. Its motion is upwards towards the Mayim archetype, which is metaphorically speaking located in the crown, or the king, or the creator's crown chakra. So basically, you're talking about creating motion from your root chakra to your crown chakra. You're trying to align, or you're trying to create a frequency. So from a dot to a line to a wave to a frequency. Again, from the root chakra to the crown chakra. There's two waters there. You have two wombs. I'll explain that at a later date as well. So you have the womb and two wombs in the mind. You have one womb in the mind and one womb of water in the lower nature. So the lower nature of man does not hold water, but the lower nature of woman does. As these two cosmic forces merge together, they interact and create a spark of divine consciousness and awakening. This awakening represents the initial point of emergence and the creative influence of Elohim into a new dimension of being. So these two cosmic forces interact and create a spark. So as above, so below, you have two natures, your upper nature and your lower nature coming together in the one creating consciousness, a cosmic force. So you have will and intention. Will comes from the mind, intention comes from the gut. That's your gut instinct. So will and intention comes with the creative spark of consciousness. That's when you awaken consciousness. So how does that happen? In a moment of despair. Can't happen in a moment of happiness. When things are always good. Things are always good, nothing ever comes. When you have a problem, that's when divine force and consciousness awakens, because it represents will and intention coming in together and coming into action and making something happen that was never created before. There has to be a cataclysmic event to make something happen. If things are good, you're not going to think to create something. So when these states, breath of Elohim, move phase the waters, it can be as thought as referring to the action of the creator as he raises his Kundalini fire using rhythmic breathing, and it blends with water, the element within the divine consciousness, thereby producing the air element. So you're breathing in and out, you're breathing in and out. It's a rhythm, it's a rhyme. So it's meditation, it's a mantra. Something's going on. So the creative process, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, was a breathing process. It was a mantra. So something came into action based on a breath and a motion. So what is the oneness of God? The whole pyramid of the oneness of God, but in three parts, a Genesis 1:3. If only interpreted thusly, I'll break it down simply like this. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created wisdom. Genesis 1:2, the Spirit of God moved, strength. Genesis 1:3, and God said, let there be light, beauty. So moving on, let there be light. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And those were the first words spoken by the Creator. They represent the word vibrations as it rises from the primordial void. The Creator takes his breath in the Ein Sof. But it is not only until after he exhales and speaks the 22 letters of the divine alphabet and it becomes an audible and the creation begins to manifest. So it's not until all the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet comes about that all of creation comes into manifest. So basically, without the Hebrew alphabet, there was no designation for words, if anything. So you can't have thought unless you create a word, or you create an alphabet and you write it down to translate. So first you had the thought, then you had to come up with an action, then you had to translate that action. In this verse, the creative word is spoken and vocalization marks the appearance of the first Sephiroth of the tree of life. From Ein Sof comes the light of the derivative air, divine elemental air, light, or, expressing itself in a decad. What's a decad? A decad means 10. So the insertion of a yod into air or in the form of air represents the implantation of structural seed and essence of the 10 Sephiroth, which is represented in the first Sephiroth, Kever. So again, if you've seen the tree of light, and that first world we're talking about has a little yod up top, that yod represents 10, and it also represents the whole tree of life. So yod has all 10 Sephiroth in one. So when you're saying let there be light in the beginning of Yod, you have 1 in 10 and 10 in 1. If that makes any sense. If it doesn't, we'll talk about it later. In the book of formation, the elemental air represented by the Hebrew letter Aleph, it is assigned to the first Sephiroth Kether and is described from breath of breath and breath of air. So again, the first Sephiroth Kether represents the breath of God and the breath of air and air. So let there be light is talking about air and the breath of God. Labor, light and labor. The Zohar Berashith writes about this verse, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And it means that the acts of creation were created in full stature and form, meaning that in their fullest, in their glory and perfection, according to the light, and that was created on the first day and came out in perfection, which was also contained in life and the world in the utterance of pleasantness and gentleness, as expressed in the words, let there be light. So what we're saying, when you say the words, let there be light, you're already talking about perfection. Perfection and glory has already come into being when you say, let there be light. Righteousness is concealed until the end of days. Labor conceals the path of righteousness. Pathways are concealed from those without a pure tongue. Those utterance of the words, let there be light, by a pure tongue realizes that light does not remain in this world, but your world next to come. So what I'm saying is, if you understand and you put in a word and somebody's righteousness, you realize that the words, let there be light, doesn't mean for light today. It means light for the future and in the world to come. Not just your world to come, but other worlds to come, if you explain it correctly, if you bring the light correctly. Again, the words utterance, let there be light, by a pure tongue that doesn't remain in this world, but yours and the next to come. Practice using your time wisely. Then they will reward the great light in this world too, as the sages say. You shall see your world in your life. So that ends my lecture tonight. I hope y'all got what I'm saying. And I hope you shall see your world in your life. We're all creators. And thank y'all for listening. You're muted, sir.
All right, man. I appreciate y'all. Appreciate you. Now, you know, I'm always going to have some questions. So I'm going to have, as we look towards our YouTube fan base and seeing if there's any questions that are in there, we'll pull that up in a second. But the first thing I was going to bring in is, I found it ironic when you're studying the tree of life and that whole process. To me, it's fundamentally human nature for us to try to recreate what the creator has created. And what I mean by that is going through that process, trying your best to go and create. That's why we like to procreate and things of that nature. So I personally believe studying creation, it just gives us one step closer, a different dimension on that creative process that brings us closer to our creator. Even though we can't do what the creator did, we find small bits and pieces of time and situations where we tap into that for a little bit. But that was the first thing initially that came up to mind, but just had to throw that out there.
Yeah, this, like I said, this is one of my favorite topics. Like I said, I've always looked into this, and the reason I looked into this is because we take that many times, and if you're a past master or you held a seat and you always say this, and the first time you hear it, you're like, okay, what does it mean? Second time you hear it, you're like, okay. Then after a while, you got to start exploring this. And you break it down. When you start breaking it down, it has meaning, multiple layers. This thing is layer upon layer upon layer. You literally can break down the entire Old Testament just in that one verse. If you know what you're doing, if you know what you're reading, if you got the right material. Kabbalistically speaking, in accordance with Freemasonry, like I said, you sometimes back in the day, the old rituals had initiations and trials where you would go through the trials by the elements of earth, fire, wind, and water, all before you made it into the lodge. So those aspects were removed. I don't know when, but interesting history. But when you look at those elements and you look at that verse, it makes a lot of sense. Let there be light. We're all here to create. What are we here to create? Are you here to create something, or are you here to just observe the creative process? Because technically we're supposed to be active creators from what I'm gathering.
I mean, see, now there, thinking about that takes me to, because you said some stuff where I was like, I originally went straight to being a past high priest, and I was like, oh snaps, hold on, new lecture. I hear some words there. And then two other thing, I saw something in the Scottish Rite. And what's ironic is all of that's found within, I believe personally, like the second degree. Then you learn too, when you learn from like a point to a line to a superficies to a solid, like that right there alone with your lecture just showed people literally that little small paragraph is what, a 45-minute presentation, and that's not even scratching probably 10% of what you can talk about.
Right. Yeah, and
Like,
I
this is crazy.
truncated a lot about it. I truncated a lot about it because literally, like, you can take each element and you can break it down. Like I said, the word, that little point, yod. Yod is seen in so many different ways, in so many different aspects, not just Freemasonry, but in different things. And when you understand what yod is and how it's broken down, you're like, oh man. But I don't want to get that secret away. It's too much in it. You got to research that on your own.
There was another lecture, if I recall correctly, about a yod and a triangle that down the road, if people search through it, they can see it.
Yeah.
And then I have a question that came from the chat. In being intentional with our time, should we also be intentional with the words we speak?
Yes. Words are magic. Every word you speak is a formula. It's a key behind it. If we pay attention to what we say and yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it. But yeah, your words are magical. And what I mean by magical is that they have effect on others. So what you say will affect somebody, whether good, bad, or indifferent. So using your words, you should use your words sparingly because they have an effect. They're just like casting spells. So there's a vibration and a frequency and a tone behind it, an inflection, a fluctuation behind it. For example, your kids will know exactly how you feel based on your fluctuation about a word or how you say something. Adults the same way. The same thing. If you've been in the military and you know how to use your voice, we call it a command voice, and then you have another type of voice. You have all these different voices that you can use. So yes, words are powerful, and words can encourage, words can demotivate, words can motivate. Words should be used sparingly. So don't waste them unless you mean them.
Was there something we were looking at too earlier that had to deal with either, was it words or vibrations that it carries information, not just so much like what you're hearing, but it was something else that we talked about. That's what I'm just trying to find right now. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, or I think you had mentioned something about audiographic frequency being carried by waves and sound. So
Yeah.
audiographic frequency carries waves and sound. Those vibrations is how we actually remember. So these sounds and tones are what we're remembering. So if you hear a certain pitch, a certain tone, or some certain tone, uh, you'll get a memory. I'll throw a movie in real quick. Falling time is on my side. Yes, it is. That sound, that frequency, there's a frequency behind it. I'm not gonna go into that movie. That's a deep movie. I'll explain that later. But even your name, just do this. Take all the vowels out of your name and write them down on a piece of paper and see if you can figure out the tone. And you grab a musical keyboard or something and figure out a melody with your sounds. Do it with your kids, do it with your family. There's a tone and a frequency behind it. So your name has power as well. Certain names have power. That's why there's certain words. That's why there's 72 names that have power, 72 names of power. And those names are vibrations and frequencies. That's why the Hebrew alphabet didn't have the vowels added in, because if you knew the vowels and you knew the consonants, you can use powerful words. They have something called a chimeia. A chimeia is basically a string of Hebrew letters strung together into a talisman, or written on a piece of paper, or even written onto the human body. And these things were said to give people strength, power, or give them the nature of God, or whatever they asked for, which was written on this. They even used this to cast spells. So knowing the power of words and knowing the power of letters and numbers and things like that, and how to write this stuff, and also with the Hebrew alphabet and the tree of life, you can create a different world for yourself. Now, do I prescribe all that? Nah, not really. I read it, I like it. It makes a little sense to me, but talking about the frequencies and the vibrations and things like that, if someone meditates, you get the gist of it. You'll get the gist of it. And I meditate, and it makes sense to me because I meditate.
And we got another one over here that was actually interesting. Thought process, putting two and two together. It says, Yahweh is the inhale and exhale. So in essence, I see it as our breath is a measure of our time, and we sacrifice our breath / words to bring forth or to create.
That is exactly, you sacrificing God every time you say something. If you, Yahweh, when you breathe out, inhale, exhale. They say what is it, the 144,000 people that would ascend back into heaven with God or whatever. What they're talking about is that we actually have somewhere about 144 trillion thousand breaths of something like that. It equates to when we actually aspire, and it equates to that 144. And that also goes back down to 9. And if you look at it Kabbalistically, and we roll right back into the tree of life, it's kind of go back to why cats have 9 lives as well. That's another story.
Okay, we'll chat offline on that one. That one kind of caught me. Like, I see where you're going with this one, sir. And then let's see. I have here that says like 1 in 10, 10 in 1, 1 in the all, and the all is in the one, the uniting or being a part of. That was from Brother Maurice Bay. Then we have Brother Cook said, whenever I hear frequency, I automatically think of AUM.
Yeah. So when you think of ohm is that one frequency. They said, well, ohm and hertz go in together. So I don't know how many people work with electricity online. I've been electrocuted before. I shocked myself. I used to work with electricity, tried to be an electrician once, but ohms, hertz, and things like that. But yeah, ohm is a frequency, it's a vibration. And you have to meditate. You sit there, close your eyes, just sit there, take a deep breath. Do that for about 10 minutes. It's a calming feeling. There's other mantras and that you can do that are written around. There's certain books you can find. They're Jewish mantras. They're also the Buddhist mantras. You also have the Tibetan Buddhist mantras, and then you also have the Hindu mantras. And fundamentally, they are rooted in the same thing. When you look at them, it's all about the vowels. E-A-I-O-U. E-A-I-O-U. Any order you put those in, they're going to put out a frequency. So those frequencies, those melodies, they can incite energy, or they can calm down energy. So it's all about how you put them. And it's all about the inflectuation. You can say the same word, and your inflectuation in that word can either hurt somebody or it can make somebody calm. But it's all about how you use it. And it's all about the vowels.
So I think I'll wait for Past Master Bailey when he comes and does his lecture. We'll get a little bit deeper into this, but I think there's a couple things that I don't know. I want to bring in for individuals watching this is if you take your time, can you give some resources or places to start if people want to come back and see kind of what are some of the things that you spoke on? Like what are you reading, watching? Like what are some of the resources? Because I think that's a little bit different with us. You know what I mean? We try to provide some either primary or secondary sources of these materials that we're looking at, so that can give a little bit of the credibility, the validity, and then you can make your own opinion. You know what I mean? You don't have to agree with everything, right? There's some things that I personally don't agree with that I've seen based off my own personal research, right? But we want to at least provide the audience at large some information.
Okay, so one of the books I'm reading, it's called, I might have to take my background off. Give me a second. Yeah. I'll take my background off. Yeah, this one is called Moses Cordova's Introduction to the Kabbalah. So for me, if y'all don't know, I'm an insane reader. And what I mean by insane reader, I'm reading about 14 different books a day, or 14 chapters out of different books a day. And this is another one called The Tree of Life, Volume 4, Palace of the Crown, of Abba and Aima. So this is basically where I'm getting a majority of my material from, and this one called The Gates of Light. Now, these three books right here are very, very complicated to read. And I've been studying Kabbalah for more than 25 years. So with these books right here, you can pick them up all day long and you wouldn't understand how I got my lecture out of any of these books unless you've read basic Kabbalah books. So there are basic Kabbalah books out there. There are numerous ones you can pick up online. And then we'll put them on the YouTube link. We'll put on the YouTube links in the chat, and then we'll also put them on the Instagram page. But one of the good ones that you can check out, basic book, is the it's called the what is it called? The 10 luminous orbs. Yeah, that one's pretty good. Then you have the Introduction to Kabbalah. Then you have Kabbalah by Dion Fortune. Those right there, those will get you started. And you can look into, if you're into the mythical or Golden Dawn tradition of Kabbalah, you can pick up that Golden Dawn version by Israel Irigardi. It's got some good information in it. You can pick up the Golden Dawn books as well. Those are good ways to start. But if you really want to get into a good understanding of Kabbalah and what it means, those are just, how do you say, makeup artists. They aren't true fundamental Kabbalah, in my opinion. They start you off on a good path, but as you delve deeper into the studies of Kabbalah, if you're serious about your practice, you realize that a lot of these books are just there to get your attention. Okay, once they get your attention, you figure out the information, move on. There's another level. Even these books I got right here, there's a whole nother level that I'm still digging, and I'm digging, and I'm digging, and I'm digging. The rabbit hole goes on and on and on. So how far are you willing to go to explore yourself? How far are you willing to go to know yourself? That's what it's all about. That's what these books are about, trying to figure out myself. If you want to follow me, you want to follow these books, what you're going to try to do is find yourself. And if you're not looking for yourself, don't follow me and don't follow these books. because that's what it is. It's about trying to find yourself. We say we know ourselves, but in reality, we really don't know ourselves, because if we knew ourselves, we wouldn't be here trying to express ourselves to everybody. We wouldn't be up on all these social media outlets talking about, look at me. We wouldn't be up here wearing all these aprons, and we wouldn't be creating fake Supreme Councils and shit stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Bro, I love it. I love it. So, hey,
I'm just saying, man, we wouldn't have fake Supreme Councils if we didn't have people saying, look at me. We just roll with what we got, man. I love my people. Hey, man, we ain't got to be in charge. You can lead from the center. That's all I'm saying.
That's true. That's true. I've actually know of a couple people who actually don't have any technical position, but have influenced multiple jurisdictions in what they do. Right. That's just, but again, that comes back down to the fundamental principles of what was taught in this lecture is you want to do things that have to do with creation, right? Like if you really seek that out, you'll be too focused on the creation process to worry about all the other stuff. You know what I mean? We're not worried about the accolades, but worried about the creation, the experience, the teachings that come with it. And then what I've learned, and this is just a side segue, is that you end up finding out that you'll get your accolades, you'll get your leading down the road. It always seems to come when you're not worried about it, but that's funny.
Yeah. I'm just saying, man, I ain't mean to do that, but I had to.
Nah, you're my guy, Blue. I'm here with you. We had a disclaimer in the beginning, but this is our opinion. I
yeah, it's just my personal opinion. Don't beat me up. Please, sorry, nobody beat me up. That's my personal opinion. I'll take the hit for it. I'll take the hit. Don't beat nobody else up but me. I'll take the hit, I promise.
Man, but it's good. So what we're doing right now, we're coming up to this time frame. And so basically what we're going to do is wrap up. I'll let you do one last idea or thought process that you have here, sir, that you can leave us. Is there a one thought or something that you can leave for here past Master Williams?
Okay, I'll just leave you with this. When you think about darkness and a void, and most people think about darkness and void or as something being evil, but it's not. Understanding what darkness and void is basically going in and understanding yourself. And I'll leave that for a later date because I'm teeing you up for somebody else to come back and hit a home run on y'all.
Well, like I said, I appreciate it. So please follow us on our platforms, not just here on YouTube, but we have a Facebook group if you want to like actually interact and have questions and dialogues. We'll start talking in there, as well as we have an Instagram too as well that be linked in the bio. So we appreciate y'all hanging out with us on this Sunday. Until next month when we have a follow-up presentation from Michael Bailey, we'll go from there. But I am Brother Stephen Barrett. We have Brother Christopher Leonard. He's been working in the background here, getting us cleared up. So thank you, sir. But we're all good to